It's alright.
Oh my god!
Yo guys, what is up? Moxsy on Borderlands 3 video, and today we're talking about updated Khaos Queen, one of my most popular Amara builds. Now, I have spent so much time debating these skill points. I ran over 30 takedowns doing time tests of different builds of how to build this, the different weapons to use. Today I'm going to be sharing my results as well as what I think is the best, most optimal skill tree that we could have for Amara. Really excited to get into it. If you guys do enjoy the video, I really do appreciate it if you guys drop a like, comment, and subscribe. And with that, let's get right into the video. Alright guys, so showing on screen right now is the updated skill tree for Khaos Queen. Now, today we're going to be talking about the point decisions that I made, starting off with the green tree. Now, we added 2 more points to this green tree. I put them into root to res. The reason we did this is for Blight Tiger. Now, the biggest change with this new update is that your action skill, which we're using Ties That Bind, does way more damage than it used to do. Because of that, and because of the 2 pretty much tankiest enemies in the game, mainly being Corrosive, Wotan, Scourge, and Anathema, having Blight Tiger be corrosive, getting those remnant orbs that are corrosive makes a big difference. And so I put those points, some extra points, into this tree to get Blight Tiger. Now, if you want to put them in clarity, you can, but it's kind of a waste in my opinion because we're going to be healing to full every single shot from sustainment. So I'd rather have more health so that we get a little bit more beefy. Now, into the blue tree, the changes that I made here were we moved points out of Fast Hands and Violent Tapestry over to Do Harm. Now, when we talk about the quantity of points that we should put into Do Harm, you could put 1 point here, 3 points into Fast Hands, and 1 point into Violent Tapestry, and you would just be fine. You don't really notice these 4 points into Do Harm until you're dealing with much tankier enemies. So when you're mobbing in Athenas, doesn't really matter if you have 1 or 4 or 5 points here because everything is just going to die. But when you're shooting at Valkyries, when you're shooting at Kraken, Wotan, any of the tankier enemies, Do Harm does make a big difference and allows us to melt those enemies in seconds. Now, this build works with any weapon. Today I'm going to be talking about the strongest ones with this build, but just to give you an idea of how strong this build is, just to show off, I did a takedown just using the Hyper Hydrator, which is a toy box gun. We beat the Mayhem 10 Mal on takedown just using this thing, and this build showing on screen should be the Wotan kill, which, as you guys can tell, when you link something with Ties That Bind to the enemy that you want to kill, the damage is crazy. So that is why we're going more points into Do Harm here. Now, I put 3 points into Transcend. Transcend is awesome here. Now, Transcend, you guys already know, it stacks twice. You're going to get a ton of accuracy and a ton of critical hit damage. Now, one of the new weapons that I really want to emphasize with this is the Light Show. The Light Show, kind of like a mini Monarch, is really strong, but it has a big spread, right? And hitting headshots with it aren't super easy. Now, with Transcend, you could make the Light Show pretty amazing because we could double stack Transcend. And now look at the crosshair, and our Light Show is a lot more accurate. Gives us a lot more ability to hit those headshots, especially when enemies are bound with Ties That Bind. So Light Show works really, really well with this. Now, I put 3 points into Alacrity and 3 points into Restless. You have 1 point left over. You can put it into Reload Speed. You can put it into Restless. But I would put that last point into Restless just because Ties That Bind is so strong right now. You always want to have it up. 4 out of 5 here is totally fine. You're going to be getting pretty significant diminishing returns, especially with topped off. So 4 out of 5 here, just fine. Now, Ascendant, just a nice pickup here. Laid Bare, Wrath. Now, we do have 1 extra point here in From Rest. Now, with weapons such as the Light Show, License, the Khaos, and having some fire rate is very nice. And the charge speed for our main boss killing weapon, which is still the Root, is really, really nice to have. But 12% fire rate here and 12% fire rate on our Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge. While it doesn't look like much, the 24% fire rate bonus that we are getting from that is significant, and you'll feel the difference. Remnant Orb, as you guys know, Remnant is crazy, uncapped overkill, splash damage, elemental damage. It's super, super strong. 1 point in here is all you need. And then Avatar, always go Avatar with any phase Zerker build. It's going to give you more damage and more cooldown just by putting these points into it, and it gives us those bonus rush stacks. Now for the red tree. Few things that I want to clarify about the red tree. So I'm still going into Anima. Of the takedowns that I did, there were some times that I went down due to Anima dot. Now, Anima increases dot damage and duration, but if Amara gets dotted, this can harm you if you are having any survivability issues. With Anima, you could take these points out and put them elsewhere. I'm personally fine with it. I like Anima, but you do not need these points here. I still put 1 point into Infusion, so when we are using non-elemental weapons, we can use Sustainment with them, but Infusion hurts splash damage, and it also hurts damage because if you're using like a corrosive weapon on a corrosive enemy, you want it always to be corrosive, and I just don't like having to mess around with it. So 1 point there into Infusion just to give us that healing with non-elemental weapons. I don't pick Infusion anymore for the ricochets. We used to put 1 point there for the extra projectiles. It's not really a thing anymore because we're already going to get max projectiles just from the guns we're using, and Forceful Expression. Tempest, easy pickup, extra elemental damage, bonus shock damage, super, super nice. Now, a lot of people ask me why I go Wildfire. Wildfire is nice. It gives you your dot spread chance. With 1 point into Violent Tapestry, we're still going to be dotting pretty much everything. However, Wildfire spreads those dots and helps with the main anointment that we use with this build, which is consecutive hits. It's going to spread those dots and allow us our consecutive hits to stack up that much faster, which is why Wildfire is awesome. Now, Dread is great gun damage and the reload speed. The reason we don't need super crazy maxed reload speed, which we are losing some points from the other iteration, is because we're going to be phase grasping so much, everything's going to die. It's going to instantly reload your weapon anyways, so you're not going to be benefiting as much from max reload speed as often. It is nice to have 5 points here, but we're just fine without it. Indiscriminate scales with Do Harm. Super, super awesome. This is why we are going Do Harm. Now, I didn't put any points into Awakening because the points that we lose going into Awakening are more noticeable. Like, having that crazy Do Harm damage is only more noticeable against those big boss fights, and I'd rather have that reload speed, cooldown, fire rate, charge speed than have a little bit more damage and Ties That Bind, because we're already doing that, and we don't really need it for Violet Tapestry or reload speed. We're totally fine there. Now, some people have asked me why I don't spec Conflux. Conflux is horrible. Conflux does not scale with anything. Anima does not scale to Conflux. Tempest does not scale Conflux. Conflux, I've said this in a few videos before, Conflux is not influenced by anything. It is not influenced by your weapons dot. It is not influenced by the dot that you drop on enemies. There is nothing that scales Conflux, and the only reason to have points into Conflux is either for your consecutive hits or for your the Guardian rank, which is Harmageddon, I believe. Here, for that, it's nice, and you can have some points into Conflux. I like having my Phase Zerker with a few points into Conflux, but if you're thinking Conflux is doing any damage for you, it is not. I should be showing a clip right now where I basically shooting a fire weapon with a fire dot. I have all fire damage. I'm not doing anything else besides fire damage, and the corrosive dot is negligible. Damage from Conflux is negligible, so do not rely on that. It is nice for some utility, but not a good damage skill. Now, 2 points into Sustainment. I took 1 point here and put it extra into Wildfire. Sustainment is really nice. One of Amara's best skills, keeps her alive. Realistically, you only need 1 point here for using weaker weapons. If your setup isn't super optimized, you may want an extra point here. 2 points is more than enough when we're hitting for hundreds of thousands and millions of damage. And our health bar is only 18k. The amount of lifesteal is going to fill you to full every single time you shoot. Lastly, Forceful Expression for that bonus elemental damage. Now, 4 ties that bind. I've been rocking Soul Sap a lot of the time. Soul Sap or Allure or Stillness of Mind. It depends on what you want to do. Soul Sap is really great because it's going to give you that healing. You don't have any loss in your damage or your cooldown because of it. So that is super, super nice. And the only time that you'll ever die in this build is when you're reloading, and Soul Sap can give you that lifesteal or healing while you are reloading. And so that's why I recommend Soul Sap, but Allure is still really good. We're not using as much ricochet mechanics anymore because the ricochet mechanics were heavily nerfed, so that's why Allure isn't as good or as useful as it used to be. Now, in terms of weapons and gear here, I talked about the light show. So when I did my takedowns, the light show, when I was just running light shows, I was averaging about 10 to 12 seconds faster than the proprietary license. I still love the proprietary license. I think it is one of the best weapons you can be using with Ties That Bind, but the light show edged it out just slightly. So light show, proprietary license, both really, really strong. The the license has a little bit better mobbing because of the splash damage that it does than the light show. I do think that the license edges out the light show for mobbing. One other really cool thing that you can do with the license is you can proc stickies on an enemy while your while your Ties That Bind is on cooldown, and then when you grasp that enemy and they go up into the air, the explosions, the delayed stickies will already be exploding on them, and you can grasp them and they'll instantly kill everything around you versus having to Ties That Bind them and then shoot at them. They'll already be dead. So really cool weapon to use on cooldown and while off cooldown of Ties That Bind. Light show works really well. Khaos, still one of the best weapons for this build. It's strong. It's not as strong as these two, but it is a great option with its splash damage, high fire rate. Really, really strong. The root, still strong. The root, you're not going to be killing yourself because we're not using AoE. We are using a Pearl. So the root did take a little bit of a damage hit, I feel, after testing with it. It definitely feels weaker when you're not using Ties That Bind, but when you are, the thing still shreds. The Monarch is still amazing. Light show, obviously amazing. I love the beacon. Now, one thing that you guys can use if you're looking for crazy, crazy one-shots on everything in Ties That Bind is use something with a 390 anoint. While this isn't going to be your best anoint for this build, when you do Ties That Bind, any damage that goes through Ties That Bind is going to be multiplied by 4 if you're holding a 390 weapon. So things that are high damage, such as the Huntress is just something I was messing around with, but anything that is 390 will one-shot everything through Ties That Bind, pretty much regardless of what the weapon is. So that's really cool. I love the beacon. Now, I did try the flipper. I wanted to give the flipper a try because I didn't like it very much last time. I gave it another try. Out of all of the weapon testings that I did, the flipper, time-wise, performed the worst. So flipper is still a strong weapon. It is good with this build, but on my time trials, I was getting the worst results when using the flipper. I personally don't really like it on this build. It's still the best weapon you could possibly using on Moze, but not a big fan of it. Lastly, we're still using an Old God. Best shield you could be using. That bonus elemental damage is super, super nice. For the grenade, doesn't really matter. I don't really throw my grenades. The best in slot thing that you could get would be an It's Piss. If you have an It's Piss and you are dotted, you could throw it at the ground and then stop the dot if you are dying from anima. My Phase Zerker isn't perfect. I'm using weapon damage, SMG damage. Splash damage here would be great. Now, action skill damage actually works on the Phase Zerker, so if you can get one with action skill damage, that's going to be like your best in slot. And action skill cooldown is all really good. And I'm using a Pearl with fire rate and magazine size. Lastly, modifiers. I use Speed Demon, Healy Avenger, Chain Gang, and Roguelite a lot of the times. You can go to Postmortem is fine to run on this build because you're just going to be killing everything. The drones are fine to use, or the minus 75% crit. I know it sounds weird to say minus 75% crit, but if you are using Ties That Bind to kill everything, Ties That Bind is never critting, and you're not going to be losing any damage there. So Ties That Bind with the minus 75% crit is just fine. I always run Speed Demon just because I miss being fast on Ricochet Witch, and Speed Demon gives me that speed that I need. Guys, that is it for the video. I hope you learned something new. Hope you enjoyed. I know it wasn't like a crazy showcase of anything because I just wanted to talk about the skill tree today, but I hope you guys did enjoy the video. I will catch y'all in the next one. Take care. Peace!